Hi, I'm Nicole Kemper. I'm a writer, actor, and filmmaker living in Atlanta, Georgia. This is 50 Foot Woman, and I've committed to shooting at least one roll of motion picture film per month. Today I wanted to talk about a resource for Super 8 filmmakers that's just out there, just sitting on eBay or in a garage sale or estate sale, and you might not be aware of it. So I just wanted to draw your attention to Super 8 Filmmaker Magazine. So I wanted to talk all about why I love this magazine, how I am using it in my Super 8 filmmaking, and just a little history about this really incredible resource that's just waiting out there for you to pick up. So I actually heard about Super 8 Filmmaker Magazine from another book that I was reading, Super 8, An Illustrated History by Danny Plotnick. A lot of the information about Super 8 Filmmaker actually comes from this book, so it's been a huge resource for me in researching for this video. Super 8 Filmmaker Magazine was founded in 1972 by Paul Shepto. What I love about this magazine is beyond its incredible wealth of resources, it treats Super 8 as a professional and artistic gauge while also not looking down on hobbyists or home movie enthusiasts. Article after article encourages Super 8 filmmakers to consider themselves to be professionals. It gives them the resources that they need to build up a stockpile of professional equipment so that they can be their own production company. Paul Shepto got the inspiration for Super 8 Filmmaker Magazine after a trip to the Middle East. He brought his Super 8 film camera with him and he shot a lot of footage, and then when he got back to the States, he was wanting to know more about how to edit all this footage that he had taken, and he found that there weren't a whole lot of resources, and so he kind of saw a need there for a regular publication where Super 8 filmmaking enthusiasts could get the information that they needed to buy equipment, to share tips and tricks, to find out about film festivals, and read interviews with other Super 8 filmmakers across the world who were using Super 8. The magazine started in New York and then moved to San Francisco in 1976. At the height of their popularity, Super 8 Filmmaker Magazine was printing up to 50,000 copies an issue. They had subscribers. They also had copies of the magazine available at newsstands. And between 1972 and 1981, they had 60 issues published. Paul Shepto was seeing a change in tide where there were a lot less people using Super 8 and moving on to videotape. So in an effort to kind of stay with the times, he changed the title of the magazine to Moving Image in 1982 and started to include a little bit more work with videotape in addition to Super 8. According to the interview in the Illustrated History of Super 8, he says that there were some people who got upset about that, but the main issue was that they were kind of ahead of their time and there weren't enough people using video as a filmmaking tool yet to be interested in keeping up the subscriptions for the magazine. And so unfortunately, the magazine ended publication in 1982. Over the years, contributors who wrote for Super 8 Film Magazine were some of the most leading artists and professionals working in the medium. This included Lenny Lipton, who's a really famous voice in Super 8 filmmaking of the time period, but also he gathered all kinds of different writers and contributors, including people that came over from photography magazines, who had written books on Super 8 filmmaking, as well as art director Kit Hinrich, who was responsible for gathering a lot of the artists that made some really incredible illustrations that you can see on the covers of Super 8 Filmmaker Magazine. One of the reasons that I was interested in getting my own copy of Super 8 Filmmaker Magazine was for a very similar reason to why Paul Shepto wanted to create the magazine in the first place. I've been working a lot with Super 8 8. I've been using YouTube as a resource for learning more about Super 8 filmmaking, and there are really incredible creators on YouTube, and I've learned so much from them. There's a lot of information about developing your own film at home, about projection, lots of camera reviews, reviews of different film stocks. So there is like a wealth of information on YouTube. But then I was starting to get a little bit more curious about some more sort of niche interests like, like mats and matte boxes and special effects and, editing film by hand using film viewers and splicers and just like a whole host of different topics that I've kind of been going down different rabbit holes about. And I discovered there wasn't a whole lot on YouTube about some of these topics. Once I heard about Super 8 Filmmaker Magazine, and again, this was because of this book that I was reading. It included an interview with Paul Sheptow, and I was like, wow, like a whole magazine that was running for almost 10 years about Super 8. Is it possible to get copies of this magazine? And as you can see here on my desk, I actually was able to secure about 20 copies. I think I have like 19 total copies here. Some of them are from like 76, 77, and then I have some others that are from like 1980 to 1981. I'm still kind of poking around on eBay, and I'll pick up copies if I see some that I haven't gotten yet. I've been trying to avoid spending as much time on my phone for a variety of reasons, but I've kind of made it a habit of at the end of my day before going to sleep, I will just read a couple of pages of Super 8 Filmmaker Magazine, and I'm just kind of working my way through the stack. And I feel like I'm learning so much already. And there are just so many articles that I'm going to return to when I'm trying out different techniques. There's just this like wealth of knowledge that exists about Super 8, which, by the way, I think you can also apply to 16 millimeter if that's something that's more interesting to you. There's just a lot of filmmaking knowledge about low budget or DIY type filmmaking that these filmmakers were sharing with each other, and all these articles. And honestly, if we let these magazines go to a landfill or sit in somebody's basement, a lot of that information is going to be lost. So I've also felt kind of a personal responsibility to purchase these magazines and hopefully share some of this knowledge on this channel as I try out different things, but also just generally to keep this knowledge so that it doesn't disappear. So I'm not going to go through like an entire magazine front to back, but I did want to talk about some of the like topics that are in these magazines, and also just like an overview of what a typical Super 8 Filmmaker magazine would be. They all seem to follow like kind of a general formula. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. If you are interested in these magazines, there's tons of them on eBay. They're not incredibly expensive. You can buy like one at a time, or like I did, you can buy like a stack of them. Usually like people are selling like about 8 to 10 issues at a time. And these are all, the ones that I have are all in really excellent condition. A typical run of Super 8 Filmmaker Magazine will start with like a letter to the editor. Then there's like a table of contents where you'll kind of get an overview of what everything is in there. And then you'll get these headlines where it's just short little paragraphs about like sort of top news that's going on in the Super 8 filmmaking community. One of the things I really love about this magazine is that it is international. So they're not just focusing on filmmakers based inside the US where the magazine was printed, but also lots of really interesting interviews with filmmakers in other countries and what's going on with those communities. And so it's really great to hear about all of the different things that were going on throughout the world in this time period. Then there'll be a series of sections focused more on the readership and how they're communicating with the magazine. This includes letters to the editor, which really gives a really great insight into what it was like to be a filmmaker in 1976. For some of you folks that were, contemporary to that time, this might be it might be fun to kind of get that nostalgia of like what it was like to be working with the medium at the time. Since I didn't really come into filmmaking until sort of the early 2000s, which was the transition from, you know, more analog formats into digital. I like reading about what things were like at this time, and how people were sharing ideas, and what challenges they were up against working with films and sending like physical copies of their only copy of their film to film festivals. I mean, that was just mind-blowing. One of those letters to the editor I read in an issue was this filmmaker who was talking about a festival who they had sent their film off to the festival, and then the festival didn't happen, but then they didn't get their film back for like 6 months, and then they weren't able to send their film out to any other festivals. And I was like, wow, that's such a crazy experience. For me, I'm sending links to a video on the internet where somebody can just watch a password protected video, and then I can make endless copies of my film to be sent off, and there was a lot more, I think, roadblocks to people actually getting their work seen when you just had those limitations of how many copies you could have, and how long it would take to get it back, and whether or not the film would come back scratched or damaged. So there's a section of where readers can write in with their questions. This one, it's called queries. So there's a lot of questions from readers about how to troubleshoot things, or where's the best place to get gear, or how to solve this or that problem. So like, for example, this person is talking about how they want to add fades, and another person is talking about, how to shoot single system sound, or where to get a particular replacement lamp for their projector. So just a lot of different things that people are writing in, and then getting their questions answered by somebody on the staff. So readers will write in and say, hey, I recently put together this particular configuration of editing equipment, and it's really compact and affordable, and here's what I did, and here's how you can do it too. Or people will talk about like, how to get rid of particular problems, or, they'll write in with tips for submitting to film festivals, or tips for getting getting copies made of your film, or just like all kinds of things. And obviously some of these tips, aren't really relevant anymore because a lot of those labs and services don't exist. But when it comes to like tips for like, particular problems that people have solved in a DIY way, like those are all things that you could still do that I think are really valuable. There are also literally tons of ads about gear. So you can see here that this one is about Elmo projectors and Elmo cameras. But there's just literally just so many different types of things. And this is one of the things that I've been doing when I'm looking for a particular type of gear. Like I'm like, okay, I'm looking for like a film viewer, or I'm looking for a projector, or I'm looking for some particular type of piece of equipment. Often I will kind of make note while I'm reading through the magazine. Like I won't skip over the ads, I'll read them as well. And then it gives me like, I feel like when you're searching for used equipment on eBay, part of the problem is just like the overwhelming, like, what do I search for? What thing do I get? Like, camera, by the way, camera reviews, the YouTubers out there, like, Filmboy24 or Analog Resurgence or Film Photography Project. They've done a lot of different camera reviews and projector reviews and things like that. And those have been incredibly helpful in kind of figure out what kind of equipment that I want to get. But also, if you go through one of these magazines, it'll give you like an actual model that you can search for if you're looking for particular features. And I think it really helps to narrow down the pool of equipment that you're looking at. Each magazine has particular features, and they're usually listed on the front. So for example, this one, and I just want to draw your attention to how cool these illustrations are. There are just so many, but overall, there are some really, really cool looking illustrations on the front. They've really got that kind of like, 70s, like they've definitely got that kind of 70s flair to them, but the attention to detail and just the creativity, and there's like some of them almost have this kind of surrealist look, and they're just really eye-catching. And so I think just another cool feature of these magazines is clearly the attention that they put into doing the cover illustrations. Anyway, like I said, most of these have some big articles in them. So this one is tips for shooting a documentary. Also, I was really surprised to see, so there are a lot of interviews with Super 8 filmmakers, but also sometimes they have just, interviews with filmmakers or editors that are maybe like underground or independent or not as likely to be interviewed by a major film magazine. For example, one of my heroes, Verna Fields. Verna Fields, a very famous editor who, in this case, you can see a lot of pictures of her here when she was working with Steven Spielberg on Jaws. So she edited Jaws, she edited Paper Moon, she worked on American Graffiti. And so she's just a really incredible lady. And as an editor and a person that teaches editing, of course, I knew about Verna Fields, and I was like so excited to read all this stuff, all this interview with her, because I think that film editors who are really, really important parts of the filmmaking process are just not as, they're not interviewed as much as, say, a director or a writer or a cinematographer. So it was really cool to see that. And there's some other articles that I've read about, there was a independent group making a feature film on Super 8, and so there was a whole piece about that. And one that I had read, often there'll be long articles about how to set up or acquire certain equipment. So they did one of the ones I read was a whole article about different projector screens and which ones are good and for certain reasons, or film viewers, or there was an article that I read that was this very extensive article about audio equipment. So mixers and equalizers, and how to set up a patch bay, and basically a lot of interviews and tips like how to get your film accepted at a film festival. And a lot of those tips are still relevant today, frankly. And just, how to set up a studio for yourself if you're a DIY or low budget filmmaker and you don't have a lot of space, which I think applies to a lot of us probably on YouTube that are interested in filmmaking. I don't have a lot of space, so how can I maximize my space with the right gear and the right setup to do the kind of things that I want to do? And again, those film gear reviews. So there's a whole article about cameras that came out in 1976, or projectors, or projector screens. You can go through one of those articles and kind of look at how the cameras were reviewed and kind of get an idea of what kind of features do you want. And then you can go to eBay or whatever. Maybe you're on the hunt, maybe you're more of a garage sale girly, or maybe you're more of get on those estate sales or whatever. You can be on the lookout for certain types of gear and knowing what features it is that you're looking for. There are some other sort of smaller features at the end. Tools and tricks is a section where I've seen some really incredible tips for some DIY kind of rigs and things. So things that I feel like you could even apply to now. There was a whole article about how to create a DIY camera mount. There's another another section about special effects, where they kind of walk you through how to do different special effects. And of course, a lot of this is in camera. So if that's what you're interested in, or using matte boxes and stuff. So I have an interest in experimenting with some of these more in camera kind of DIY film effects. So if you're interested in that, like I am, so this one, for example, is looks to be something to do with mats, and they're creating kind of a space, outer space kind of scene, using a painting and the camera and some lighting, and it's all in camera. There was an article in one of these magazines that Lenny Lipton wrote about stereoscopic, so filming 3D with 2 Super 8 cameras. There was one where tips about how to make a realistic corpse if you're making like a horror film. So there's just all kinds of cool little tips and tricks in here for the low budget filmmaker. There's also in many of these 1976-77 issues a series about animation. How to kind of, because of course this would be, you know, triggering a single frame to do the animation. Like, how do you time out how long it's going to take for a character to say something? How do you draw the shapes of different different syllables? There's a bit about stop motion and rotoscoping and all kinds of other. So if you're interested in animation or incorporating Super 8 and animation, there's some good information in here as well. So usually towards the end, there's like profiles of different filmmakers in internationally. So sometimes there'll be a profile of a filmmaker who's like in Venezuela or Paris or Israel. Or one of the ones that really stood out to me was this nun who was using Super 8 cameras so she would teach young girls survivalism in the woods. That was like her thing, is she would take these young girls out into the woods and teach them survivalism, and they would make these educational videos on Super 8. And I just found that really fascinating. And so it's just little things like that where you get like just a little taste of what people all over the world were doing with Super 8 at this time. Usually it ends with these sort of like, you know, your standard, those of you guys that have ever seen a newspaper, like ads and services and workshops. And a lot of this stuff doesn't exist anymore, but I just enjoy kind of reading about it. It's kind of like a look into the culture and the community of the time. In addition to all those ads about Super 8 cameras and film viewers and stuff like that, there's also a lot of ads for catalogs of Super 8, of films on Super 8. So like cut downs of big movies. This one's Bridge Over the River Kwai, Cat Bayou, It Happened One Night. There's some Charlie Chaplin, or like I've seen ones that were like, you know, like cut downs of Star Wars films and stuff. And then let's see, here we've got Kodak, who I think most notably, they would buy the back page of every issue. And this one is an ad for Kodachrome 40 and Ektachrome 160. So I hope that this video entices you a little bit to maybe be on the lookout for these old issues of Super 8 Filmmaker Magazine. They're just really in a real joy to read about the filmmaking community at that time. I think they're really great for inspiration and ideas of different things that you could do with Super 8. And just if you're like an equipment hound and you're just like, I love Super 8 equipment and I want to know all about it. God, there's just so many articles that can give you ideas of stuff to be on the lookout for. It's just, again, such an incredible resource. All these folks who were spending all this time pushing the limits of the medium and trying to see what they could do with it. And it's just all here, and it's all here for us to soak up. So I hope that you will, like me, make it your mission to try to get your hands on some of these so that this incredible knowledge isn't lost, and so that we can use it to inspire us to do new and fun things with Super 8. Thank you for watching. If you like this video and you would like to watch more videos, I hope that you will stick around and subscribe to the channel. The channel is Critical Crop Top Films, which is my production company, and all of the videos for this series are in the 50-Foot Woman playlist. I've also been sharing my photos on Instagram, so if you're interested in looking at some of my photography, and I'm hoping to get some of my Super 8 and 16mm, some little blurbs of some of the stuff I've been shooting up there. You can find that on Instagram at 50-Foot Photos. If you find that you need more Super 8 magazines, I have good news for you. There are actually some that are currently in publication right now. So I thought, since we were talking about old magazines, we might as well talk about the folks that are out there who are still printing Super 8 magazines. So these guys make a magazine just called Super 8. I think they put out like 4 issues a year. Whenever I get one in my mailbox, it's just such an exciting surprise. They're based out of Berlin, and you can buy their, I'll put the link to them in the description of this video, and you can buy individual issues or you can subscribe and have them sent to your house. One of the interesting things about it is because this is a magazine from Berlin, half of it is in German and half is in English. So you'll get like an article with pictures in German, and then you'll get that same article in English. So you get twice the pictures. And my daughter has been studying German for the German language for many years. So she sometimes, even though she has no interest in Super 8, she'll read this magazine because she's, trying to increase her fluency in German. So, but this is a really great magazine. There's lots of interviews with filmmakers who've been using the medium or are currently using the medium, information about the history of Super 8. There's an article in here about a guy who likes to buy expired Super 8 film stocks and different ways that he tests it in developing, so he knows exactly what exposure and to use and all that kind of stuff. So really, really cool. And like I said, I just get so thrilled every time. There's in this issue, there's a bunch of different places where you can get your camera serviced, which is that's sometimes can be hard to figure out. I just get so thrilled every time I get one of these in the mail. So maybe you pick up a couple of these old guys, these old Super 8 Filmmaker magazines. Maybe you subscribe to a new Super 8 film magazine and you're just like soaking up all this knowledge of Super 8 and just like blasting your creativity into the stratosphere. Thanks again for watching, guys, and just get out there, pick up an old Super 8 Filmmaker magazine or a new Super 8 magazine. Learn some new and exciting tips and tricks, and get out there and shoot more film, you guys.